What we do here is go back.
Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody's good. I need to start my call on... Give me 1 second, guys. I got to start the call on in Discord here. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay. Check 1, 2. There we go. All right. Right on. Okay. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good here. Friday. Are the lows in? So, I absolutely do not think so. I know we've had quite the crazy rally the last couple of days. I do honestly think that the worst is yet to come type of scenario. I think a lot of this had to do with the imbalances. A lot of this has to do with algos and basically I think the market makers trying to come back to make some back of their losses. I mean, we're talking about billions lost in just a couple of weeks. So I think this was their chance. They were able to push up, especially with the low volume and people waiting on this vote. So no, I don't think so. I don't think the lows are in yet, and I don't think that we're not going back to all-time highs either. I think both of those scenarios are still on there, as crazy as that sounds. Many reasons why. I will post some stuff over this weekend. Depending on if we do that podcast this weekend or not, we will probably talk about this quite a bit. Speaking of the bill, so I had posted some stuff yesterday about what they were saying about today, starting at 9. They were supposed to have a 2-hour meeting now through Benzinga Pro. They are saying that there is supposed to be a 3-hour discussion on the bill this morning. So I'm not sure if that's still starting at 9 and then going for 3 hours, or if, who knows. So I have a feeling at any moment we're probably going to get some sort of headlines out of that. So that'll be one thing that we're going to have to watch carefully, as we're playing today. As you can see on the chart here, we had that big rally at the end of the day. So we had been pushing up all day, pretty much consolidated across, and then big push up there at the end of the day. After hours, we did hit a high of 26.3450, and then pretty much right after that, they were able to break down VWAP, and it just pretty much the selling ensued. There was a little bit of the typical, like I always say, guys, though, it's this 1 a.m. pop, and it has a lot to do with Asian markets, and it has a lot to do with pre-market by the bigger hedges. So that pushed up in the VWAP. They weren't able to hold it, and then it just got ugly from there. So that's where we're sitting now. We're sitting down just about 84 handles here, so about 3.2% going into the open. As far as the game plan on the market today, it's going to be tricky with waiting for those news events. But what I do think what we'll end up seeing is a lot of chop. I think we're going to get an inside day from yesterday, so going to be pretty much range bound. I would be surprised to see this thing absolutely rip from the headline. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there will be a lot of profit taking today because, I mean, we went up, well over 20%, you guys. This is just absolutely insane. So there is definitely a lot of profit taking today. I think we'll see that towards the close especially. The reason that we've been getting these big pops right at the end of the day is not what most people assume. This is what I was talking about last week about the all-electronic NYSE. What's happening is that when, and this is me being 99% sure of this, and I'm not the only one. I've been looking into this for the last couple of days, but like what's happening is that the all-electronic algos, what happens is they see those imbalances at the end of the day, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna buy, and so it just trips, and so that's why we're getting these crazy little spikes there. The thing is you got to be really careful, because now that people are starting to realize that, they're going to try to short the crap out of that and flip it. So then it can go the other way, because then the algo sees that and it wants to do the same thing to make profit, right? So it starts sell. So that's kind of what we're getting at there. I will definitely be posting about what I'm seeing there at the end of the day if we're not still on stream then at that point. But it's just something to be careful about. So my big thing is what I'm saying is take profits, guys. Like that's all we can keep saying. It's been the same story the entire time. Is buy the dips, sell the rally, right? Like just fade that rally, buy the dips, fade the rally, buy the dips. So when on any big spikes, I'm selling it, and then on any of these big dips, I'm buying it. So I mean, we are down over 3%. So do we buy here? I'd wait to see what the chop does and see if it can push down a little bit more. But I'd be inclined on some, especially like when you're looking at like levels like these. If it's sitting there and consolidating on that, more likely it's probably going to push back up. Now, then you set your stop just on the other side of that, so that if it does break, you're good to go and you get out right there. And at that point, that's usually when I'm reversing, depending on the situation. Quickly, I'll go through a few things from this morning before we look at some of the other charts. So this morning, Boeing was upgraded from hold to buy with a price target of 220. Tesla has actually been upgraded on two different analysts. One of them that carries more weight for me, also being upgraded from neutral to buy with a $800 price target. Zoom video, ZM, not ZOOM, ZM, are up 5% this morning. Traders attribute the upside to report and circulation of Deloitte website, Zoom conferencing and collaboration. I had just posted in trade ideas because this is something I'm definitely looking at. So in Discord, there is that from looking at the chart on a technical level, Zoom video looks absolutely ready for a short squeeze coming. So that is something that I definitely was positive enough that I put it in the trade ideas tab because that is definitely something I think is worth watching. I'd really like to see that volume come in strong, and that's where we're going to get a big short squeeze because it looks literally textbook. Like you could literally put the textbook drawing over that, and that's what it would look like. What else did I have this morning in there? There's some stuff on oil, but I want to go more in depth with that than I can right now. Hold on. I'm looking back through my notes here, guys. Give me 1 second. I think that was it. Oh, no. There's something about... So, Boeing, Tesla, Zoom. Yeah, a bunch of stuff on oil. There's all sorts of stuff on oil. Ford plans to reopen some plants soon, but workers are worried about coronavirus, so I am still quite short on all automakers. Oh, that's right, the marijuana stocks. That's what I wanted to talk about. So I brought it up a couple days ago, and obviously it was nailed it because they all have been doing very, very well, at least the main ones. The one that I think everybody should be watching is Tilray. So if anybody doesn't know, it's TLRY. So Tilray. So Tilray, Brostein says Tilray stock is still down from the month in close. But they are definitely, there's a new venture founder that is talking about how strong they think this is going to be pushing. So I think that everybody, the big move this week is over, but keep an eye on Tilray because on pullbacks, I'm going to be buying shares in this in my long-term account, but I'm just saying that something I've been watching and I was right. I talked about this a week ago. I'll find it and post it in Discord, but literally been talking about the marijuana stocks and they are moving. There's a few different reasons why, but mainly it's just some more the legalization and the fact that even through all of these lockdowns, they have been left open. They've been allowed to stay open. So that to me is a very significant. So that they're going to stay strong even, and it's just like alcohol. And even in depressions, the sales are absolutely booming, if not more, right? So I think it's going to be the same thing no matter what happens with the economy. I think the marijuana stocks might be absolutely a safe haven, as crazy as that sounds. I think that's it as far as that. Yeah. So big thing will be waiting for this announcement on the bill. I have a funny feeling they're going to try to absolutely spike this back up. Again, be careful with the profit taking. I know there's something else I had, but that's okay. I'll think of it as we get into there. There's going to be more stuff going on that you guys will hear me and Apex talking about with the whole imbalance with the VIX, with volatility. As far as you guys need to know, it's just that there's still a lot of risk in this market. So you can see looking at the futures map here, XLF is going to be opening down significantly as well. Oil continuing to fall. It's already down another 4% this morning. Clear back down to $21. This poor thing just cannot catch a break, and there is a lot going on with that. I do see some macro events on the horizon, though, that oil is probably going to get a big push here soon. As I'm speaking, you can see on the right hand side in the middle there, gold /GC. Gold is starting to make a push back up. It was down a couple percent, but it's already pushing back up here over 1650. Below that, the 10 years and the bonds, you can just see just pure green pushing up. That is a very bearish signal. So bonds are pushing up very strong. So what's happening is I think a lot of this profit taking and people are not out of the woods. They probably saw this week as a gift, but they're starting to obviously move their money back into safe havens, especially into bonds. So this is why I titled the video that I did, because I do not think we are out of the woods at all, and these are not lows. People are significantly stashing cash back into bonds and treasuries. You can see that there is a little bit of a slight discorrelation in the markets here. The Nasdaq is down 2.4, while the ES is down a little over 3. So that'll be something that we'll be watching, which means that tech is a little bit stronger than the rest of the market. So speaking of tech, we will look at the openings for FANG here before the bell. So Facebook closed at 163.34. It's down to 157, 158. Apple closed at 258. It's down all the way down to 252. It really needs to recapture that 253.98, and then it can push back up and possibly turn green on the day. Amazon finished decently strong yesterday at 1955. It is down about 25 about 30 bucks actually, sorry. Netflix was very, very strong yesterday. I believe it closed up like 6%. And it's actually held on to a couple of significant price levels here this morning. So as long as it can push through that 358.50, it's doing decently strong compared to the rest of FANG. Google closed at 1162.92. We are down to 1122. Microsoft also had a really strong day yesterday. Closed up at 156.11, and it needs to capture 152 here because it's down at 151. So I think FANG will be all telling as far as the market is going. As far as some of the stuff I was talking about yesterday, keeping an eye, and I'm sure some of you guys saw Hobbleton, how you say it? Hobbleton. I always say Hobbleton, I think, but he brought up some great points on it, which he nailed exactly the analysis I was looking at on it as well. Keeping an eye on Roku, that it did break the upper Celt on the 4 hour, and that's what I kept saying over and over is why I was not hopping into it yet. I wanted to watch and see where it ended the week. I'd like to see it recapture that, and hopefully by Monday it can be still consolidating, holding up above that, and then I would be getting long. But as it is right now, it's a no touch for me, and that's exactly what I kept saying for the last couple of days, is to keep an eye on, is to watch those levels. So we are going to open up here. There is a couple things real quick on the market I want to show you. So on the daily, you can see that we bumped right here. Well, on the weekly, there's the 200. We did bump right into it and come off. You can see that they're also trying to save this on the monthly, guys, on the lower Celt. So this is why we look at all time frames, especially the larger time frames, to see where we're at in the market. So that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on today and going into next week, into the month end, is watching these levels. So there is the bell. Let's see where we opened up. Going to start getting a push up here. And where's our ad decline? Let's see what ADS-PD is opening up at. God, Thinkorswim is so delayed. So negative 497. We went from positive 460 yesterday to now negative 497 opening on the ADS-PD. On the ad decline is negative 2271. So very, very significantly low. I mean, we are down 3%, but that's actually more significant than I expected to see here. Getting some very strong sell ticks, even though price is pushing up. So this, I would expect to see this possibly flip around here. Let's blow that up a little bit. I can't see the internals. Wow, this is opening up super, super bearish today. Come on. God, it's so sticky. These stupid servers, I swear they're... And it looks like ad decline is continuing to fall. It is. Yeah, so even though there is a divergence here, you can see as price is pushing up, the ticks are negative and ad decline is continuing to push down. So I would expect this to flip around here. Sometimes you can catch it really nice if this pushes up really high, and that's happening with the divergence with the ticks and ad decline, and it gives you a great short entry. It's really nice when that happens. Darth is really, really good at watching those, and it sucks because like before we broke down like this last month, we were getting a lot of these divergences where price was either pushing down and ad decline was rising, and we were able to get in absolutely amazing long positions, or the opposite, like today where price was pushing up, getting super negative ticks, and ad decline continuing to fall, and then you're getting that awesome divergence that is almost like 100% guaranteed reversal. Sometimes they last longer and give you better entries. A lot of times it's pretty quick. You got to be kind of on it pretty fast. It's kind of hard to catch the initial move a lot of times, especially if you're not set up and ready to trade. Let's see here. I'm looking at a couple things here. Dow tanks more than 800 points. We already know that. Man, Microsoft opening way down here. Let's take a look at that in a second. So yeah, these ticks are super negative, and the ad decline continuing to fall, but yet price is not following along with it. So there's a lot of push up here in the indices. So it's probably more likely than anything that even though the stocks are falling, trying to pull it down and pulling down like ad decline, and the ticks because it's overall the market, right? This is actually probably they're buying into, and this probably is exactly what we've been talking about with all that the infinity QE is that they're buying into the actual indices themselves. They're not actually buying. Obviously they're not buying. Well, so they say, but they're not buying actual names. So we'll see. The VIX is elevated up about 9.5% here, sitting at 66.81. The VVIX is up at, holy cow, 173 again. God, that thing's cannot catch a break. So this is more normal that I've been talking about. It's been kind of weird lately, but this is what we normally see on a bearish push down. You see XLP, the staples pushing up. As XLF, the financials are pushing down. This is normally the correlation. It's been interesting that they're just buying everything up lately, where staples were pushing up as well as financials. That's very strange. This is more normal. So oil continuing to push down here. It just came off the lows just a little bit, but it's still down 3.85%. You can see gold kind of mellowing out, but wow, the story right here is definitely going to be the 10 years in bonds. They are being so much cash being pushed into those right now. So that's definitely something we've got to keep our eye on to give us little indications where we're going. So Facebook opened up down 4%. Apple opening up about 3% here. Amazon's down 1.5%. Netflix, again, so it recaptured that level I'm saying, and it's pushing up now nice and strong. It's by far the strongest of all the FANGs today. It's down just about $3. Google's down 2.8%, and Microsoft down 2.7%. So of all the FANGs here, Netflix is looking much stronger, and it grabbed that key level. You can see there literally, I mean, look at compared to every other chart how it's under all those lines of resistance. And then you've got Netflix, looking decently strong. So, not that I would be a buyer right now in here necessarily, but what I am saying is this is showing some character. So, looking forward from there, Netflix might be the stronger one. Or as we get shorter, maybe into next week, then you're knowing that Netflix being pushed up is the one that's going to break. So it kind of gets a little bit tricky there. Okay, so yeah, so Roku, is just continuing to fall down past these lines here. Now, it really is going to need to hold on to these levels, because now that it probably isn't going back up over the upper Celt necessarily in the next couple days, if it can hold on to these levels, then there might be that next push up there. It gets a little bit trickier in between in the middle Celts here. Usually you're looking for something below or above these, but in the middle, it's kind of no man's land, so to speak. But yeah, so showing a bit of weakness here. We'll see what she wants to do by the end of today and into next week. Boeing is down 6%. Activision down just about 1%. Shopify down another 4%. It really needs to hold on to this upper Celt. This might be a nice trade here as well. If it can hold on to this and consolidate for a couple of days, it needs to breathe after this big, ridiculously big run that I was in last week, or this week, sorry. Nvidia down 1.3%, and Tesla is down 3.8%. Now, again, Tesla's running back right into this really key structure here on these big golden yellow lines. As long as it can hold on to this with some of these upgrades, when the market turns around, if it does, then this is going to be a very, very strong play on Tesla. The nice thing about Tesla is even though it's expensive, you can buy out of the money on these plays because it's moving. The range is so big. BABA down about 2%. Baidu down about 2.24. AMD's down just under 1%. Qualcomm down 1.7%. Disney is down 5.8%. And McDonald's down about 2% this morning. So that's what we're looking at. So you can see the ad decline is flattening out here very, very abruptly and sharply as price is still trying to push up. So this is, again, exactly what I'm saying is where even though we're getting negative ticks, they are trying to push money into here. They're trying to buy this up. So you can see that line in the sand. They were able to, it did dip below there, but they were able to recapture that. That's going to be a key level today if they can't keep this buying up. So it'll be interesting to watch where they're going. Oh my gosh, these ticks are just straight down, just so bearish. This is so crazy to see this happening. Normally we'd be down another 2-3%, but they're pumping cash into there for sure. I wanted to look this on a longer time frame here real quick. Yeah, so VWAP is at 25.59, so and they're holding on to that lower celt on the monthly, so that's interesting.
Popping to $7.67, up 6.6% now on Novio in the November Oscar.
Boeing continuing to fall down 7%. Beyond is down 5.5%. Caterpillar down just about 5.5% as well. Citi down 4.8%. Disney's down 6%. Facebook is continuing to fall at 4%. FedEx is down 4.6%. Gold is still up, just barely in the green. It's probably going to turn around here any second. Home Depot down 2.3%. HP down 2%. Wow, 9%. Holy cow. Hewlett Packard is down 9% this morning and going. Jeez. God, did something come out on that? That is ugly. Huh, I don't see anything on it. What was that? Yeah, oil is continuing to get uglier and uglier. So USO is down another 6.83. I'm definitely going to pick up some more long-term calls again on that because I just cannot beat these price points. These are just absolutely ridiculous. Walmart looking pretty strong this morning, guys. Take a look at Walmart. It is up 1.3%. Showing some really good strength in all of this, but Target being down 0.79, so that's interesting. So Target's down slightly, Walmart being up decently here. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on, guys. Saudi Arabia says there are no talks to consider enlarging OPEC group. No discussion with Russia about joint output cuts. Yeah, great. That's just going to get uglier. Oh, yeah, the other one I wanted to tell you guys. Gosh dang, I knew there was one I was missing. So the other one upgraded this morning was Coca-Cola. So ticker symbol KO. So they are upgraded from hold to buy, $54 price target. That's Coca-Cola, ticker symbol KO. That's a great one to play on a smaller account. It's a beautiful, beautiful mover. It's strong. Coke is one of those really nice ones to own as well. They pay a nice dividend, and honestly, one of the most recession, depression-proof stocks there are right now. And not that I really care about the actual company, but the fundamentals are fantastic. So TLT is back above 165. I am looking for a price target in TLT of 170. I have a feeling we will get up there. So that's something I've been watching the last couple of days. I was going to take a trade in it, but then when I switched to this new account challenge, I obviously had to kind of change things around. But in my long term, I have a bunch of really, really far out calls in that. So TLT 165, looking for 170. If you can get if you want to get in on that, you'd wait for a little pullback and then get into there. So that 25.2350 was critical here, and you can see they're starting to break that down back below the sand here. So the thing is, do they buy this back up again and save this on this level, or is this going to continue to get ugly here? So that's that line in the sand. They'll need to turn that around quick if they're going to try to save this.
AOBC, American Outdoor Brands, popping here 747 for Oscar Bravo Charlie.
Looks like they're gonna keep trying to save it because you can see how they just did it over here. So that's something watching. What in the world? Wow, weird. Everything is going so delayed for me. Sorry, guys. Hold on a second. I don't know what's going on here. Why is it doing this? What is the problem? It's something. It's right around the same time, and I think it's because all these people coming on for school. It's the only thing I can come up with.
QTRX, Quantarix statement on COVID-19 preparedness, resiliency efforts and continuity.
Well, Sparty, if you're in that Zoom play for that short squeeze, I wouldn't. It's not going to happen just immediately. That's what I'm saying. It's gonna take a little bit of time. It doesn't just happen in 2 seconds. And that's what they would do. That's their whole idea, right? They would get people in. They want to draw more people in, and then they rip the rug from underneath your feet. That's how it works.
Back into the highs now, 774, indicating November.
I'm looking at it right now. It's still looking exactly how. Well, let's see here. Wow, this is going so delayed. What is wrong? I think I'm getting throttled like ridiculously. I really think this does not make sense. It's running horribly. Yeah, well, Spartacus, what are you talking about, man? That Zoom, I mean, it is the short squeeze. It already happened. I mean, you basically would have happened right out of the gate. I mean, it's up 9%. Well, 8.5%. It's up over $12 this morning.
Demand. That's AAPL.
The only thing is for this zoom play, for the squeeze to continue, this volume really needs to pick up, and I'd want to see this thing push clear up into like basically like 165. I mean, huge, beautiful move. So I mean, really could not have been better giving that out yesterday, and then talking about it again this morning here would have been a perfect, just right out of the gate here. Yeah, so it would have been right on that. Yep, right on that tiny little dip there immediately. Surprised, but it hit that 154. I would have wanted to see the volume continue to pick up and push that into 156. So it's probably going to fade now the rest of the day here. Yeah.
APT on volume. That's Alpha Papa Tango.
What the heck is wrong with this thing? There we go.
NVAX, Novavax at the highs of the day now. November Victor Alpha X-ray.
Thought they were going to continue to dip that. They're trying to buy that right back up. They're trying to get that line in the sand again. They want that.
Before the high now.
What we do here is go back.
Yeah, they're saving that line, just like we were saying. That's crazy to watch that. And they're just watching it in real time, just watching them save that over and over. That one dipped a lot farther than expected, though. That's crazy.
MARK remark. Holdings getting a spike.
Stock you talking about?
High of 42 cents up.
I was talking about Zoom, but that was just a couple minutes ago about the squeeze they put on Zoom. But then I was talking about the market.
Alright. I'm gonna go for it. So I'm not gonna go in as aggressive. Warming up for the day. And I don't think I'm gonna get filled.
BPQ getting a spike here. Bravo, Bravo, Quebec. Hitting a high of 277 now. It's $2.50.
So, looks like President Trump is supposed to be speaking again today, right around the end of the day. Scheduled for. Is it scheduled for 3 p.m. or is it scheduled for 1 p.m.? I'll post it as soon as I know for sure. Yeah, President Trump and the coronavirus task force, blah, blah, blah. Okay, hold on. Yeah, so 5 p.m. So after the market, yeah. So after market closes. So an hour after the market closes. So I wonder what that is. That's strange. So that might be negative. So definitely not holding anything over the weekend for me. Nothing short term, at least.
And NVM, Nano Dimension, low price stock moving higher now on some volume. November Delta Michael. AMZN, Amazon extending policy on prioritizing essential items beyond April 5th. Says list of essential items will broaden on item system basis, item by item basis, given capacity constraints. Amazon seller, that's the Amazon Services Seller Forum. David Jabbers tweeting a little while ago says October COVID virus vaccine trials expanding to Atlanta. Plus, FDA will announce it today. That tweet now shares of Moderna mRNA reacting to that report. Now at 29:07, Michael Romeo November Alpha.
Apex, if you're listening. So the Lulu stuff we were talking about last night. So their earnings, EPS $2.28 on revisions 1.4 billion versus estimated 2.25 and 1.38. Gross margin 58% versus 57.3 year over year. Operating margin was 29.8%. Quarter four compares store sales. Comparable store sales 9%, direct to consumer net revenue increased 41%. So literally kind of mixed bag as it can get, but interesting to see that people were buying. At least it's going to be interesting to see because it looks like from that they're definitely slowing down. So interesting, and I think we'll see a lot more of that kind of stuff from more retail names coming out. I think it's just going to get a lot lower, and then obviously quarter two is going to be horrendous. But if they all start lowering guidance, then they can kind of fall in line, and that's how they do that, is that when they know they're going to lose big, they're going to come out with some nasty story about lowering guidance, and the stock will drop, for a couple days, but they save themselves a massive loss for come earnings, because then they can beat it, and then they get giant rips, which is so ridiculous, and why I take analysts' word for a grain of salt. But it's good to pay attention so that you can catch those moves for that exact reason. Let's see here what's going on around the market. Wow, Beyond is just falling apart. Let's take a look at the futures chart. So the VIX is starting to come in a little bit as things are coming off of their lows. Oil is back at the lows of the day, down 5.4%. Oil still having trouble getting back over that 1650. really watching these bonds and 10 years here. So bonds are starting to come back down a little bit. So we could see a possible short. I mean, look how this is just so ugly on the 1 hour on the ES, but that doesn't really matter during market hours after pre-market. So we'll see. Facebook continuing to fall a little bit here, but off of the lows. Apple trying to make a push up, as well as Amazon and Microsoft and Google, and so all the bottom. So Netflix is trying to push back up. They did lose that key significant level of 358.52, so they're down 1.75% now. But I mean, Google and Microsoft looking super ugly, down almost 4% each one of them. But Facebook leading the charge here, down 4.5%, Apple 2.9, and Amazon 1.8. So pretty bearish in tech. So we'll see. Roku coming off of the lows for a little bit. Boeing is actually holding up okay up here, because it's actually going to be holding up on that upper celt on the 4 hour. So honestly, this might be a good opportunity that if it can consolidate and hold that up there, it might be that next push up. So this might be the pullback day to get long in Boeing if you think it's going to continue to push up farther next week. So be interesting to watch where that thing ends up on the second 4 hour chart later this afternoon. That'll be something I'll definitely be watching. Looks like Disney bounced right off of that 14 MA and middle Celt cross, so that is still holding up decently here this morning. So they keep saving that line there in the sand, so that's going to be the key inflection point for the day, I think. Once that breaks up or down, that's where we'll most likely see our trend for the day. God, this thing is just straight across. I was trying to blow it up to see if I could make any more sense out of it, but it is just straight up, or straight across, sorry.
The consensus was 90. 89.1 on Michigan consumer sentiment versus the 90 consensus.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So link to the House debate on $2 trillion coronavirus relief package started at 9 a.m. is scheduled to run till noon. Okay.
Mitch McConnell still tried to use this third package to put huge corporations first. But Democrats fought to make this bill about the folks who really need help. And thanks to the leadership of Speaker Pelosi and our extraordinary committee chairs, that's what this bill does. For healthcare workers on the front lines of this fight, the working folks and small business owners struggling to get by, that's why this bill provides $130
on Discord, you guys can't hear, but on YouTube, I've got the audio pulled up on the coronavirus. I just want to watch it for a minute here.
To workers and families, and an average of 4 months of full pay for workers who are laid off because of this crisis. Let's pass this bill now. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland Reserve. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile.
Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Americans' health and American jobs are being attacked by an invisible virus. And this House is called upon to respond today.
So yeah, this should be about 3 hours, and then they'll vote. So around the noon hours, when they're supposed to vote. I can't imagine it not passing. That would be insane if it doesn't. So there's a lot of why we're going to get this weak volume and weak sauce chopping around here. I think that's where things might get shaken up, guys. So noon hour.
America is fighting a war on two fronts: a public health crisis and an economic crisis. While far from perfect, The CARES Act provides needed relief, free testing, supplies for hospitals, protections for workers' paychecks, and assistance to those who've lost their jobs. At times, this bill does leave much to be desired. There's unnecessary spending, including a $25 million for a Washington, D.C. theater. However, the Senate did its job. President Trump continues to do his job. Now the House must do ours. We cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I thank the Speaker. I now yield 1 minute to my friend from Colorado, the president of the freshman class, Mr. Joe Neguse.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
One of the many leaders of the freshman class, and this talented freshman class. Thank you, Majority Leader Hoyer, for your leadership. Thank you to Speaker Pelosi for her leadership, and our very distinguished committee chairs for their work on this incredibly important
Wow,
bill.
Tilray is up
As many have said,
31%
this bill is
this
far
morning.
from perfect, but let us
It's
be clear
continuing to
about one
push up.
thing.
I told you guys.
The American people need relief now.
Jeez.
Not tomorrow, not next
What a
week,
beauty.
not
What a
next
beaut.
month, now. And so the question before this chamber is very simple. Will we step up for the American people? Will we step up for the healthcare workers, sacrificing their own health to save the lives of others? To the millions of unemployed across our country in each of our states, struggling to make ends meet, to pay their rent, to be able to feed their families? To the small businesses in Boulder and Fort Collins and Broomfield and across our country on the brink of collapse? To the scientists at CSU and at NIH and everywhere in between working to develop a vaccine to the COVID-19 pandemic? I pray and I hope that we will step up for them by passing this bill today. Let's get it done. Let's meet this moment.
Beautiful entry on this five-minute chart here on
Yes,
that
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to
5-minute
yield 1
tail.
minute.
Would have grabbed it on this
Gentleman from
first
Kansas, Mr. Marshall.
green candle. Man,
Gentleman
that
from
thing
Kansas
is just,
recognized for
yeah, this is
1
looking
minute.
really good today.
I thank the gentleman for
I will
yielding.
wait for a pullback
Last
until
Sunday, the
they
Senate
probably next
announced
week,
a bipartisan
and then
framework
probably
to help
get in.
individuals and
Might
small
even buy some
businesses
shares in my
through the
long-term
Chinese
portfolio on this thing when it
coronavirus
pulls
crisis.
back again.
Then politics
crazy,
entered
just
the fray.
$5
In
yesterday.
the 5 days that have followed, coronavirus has cost hundreds of Americans their lives. Over
Beautiful.
40,000 infections have occurred and millions of jobs have been lost. But thank goodness cooler, more pragmatic heads have now prevailed. I want to thank our president for his leadership, for halting travel from China, and I want to thank the president for reaching out early to private enterprise to solve the testing challenges. These are decisions that actually saved lives. And finally, I want to thank the president for his constant message of hope and determination, for believing in us that we will develop cures and vaccines that we can and will rebuild this great economy. As a physician, I want to remind Americans to follow the president's 15-day guidelines. Let's flatten the curve. Let's not let up. Let's ignore petty political games and beat this virus. As one nation under God, this exceptional nation will prevail. Thank you, and I yield back.
Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Speaker, at this time I yield to the gentlelady from the Philadelphia suburbs, Miss Susan Wild from Pennsylvania. 1 minute.
For 1 minute. Gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the representative of Pennsylvania's 7th District, just an hour and a half from New York City, I have a unique perspective on this crisis. The two world-class hospital networks in my community, the Lehigh Valley Health Network and St. Luke's University Health Network, are also the biggest employers in my district. They anxiously await the spread of this disease to our front lines. Across my community, our nurses, lab techs, PAs, physicians, and custodial and cafeteria staff have worked tirelessly to care for every patient. Despite their concern for their own well-being and despite often lacking adequate gear to protect themselves, they put the most vulnerable ahead of themselves. They are the pride of my community. The actions of healthcare workers around the country say to us, we are all in this together. Our response cannot be fend for yourself. Now we have to do our part and provide them with enough personal protective equipment and enough ventilators for their
The gentleman
patients.
from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute. Gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Gentleman from Arizona
Mr.
is recognized
Biggs,
for 1
that's hilarious. What a cool
I thank
name.
the gentleman. The vote we take today may be the most monumental vote during our tenure in Congress, and the amount of money we are committing is in itself epic.
And I've heard folks from both sides, and particularly the other side, talk about this is all for the families and the working people. And yet I find myself saying, if that's the case, we might have produced a bill that didn't include millions of dollars for non-essential, non-emergency related funding, such as the Kennedy Center, NPR, the Smithsonian, Institute of Museum and Library Services, National Endowment of Arts and Humanities. Could we have done this without strengthening the hand of unions in the private sector? Sure. But we give $88 million to the Peace Corps, which fired over 7,000 volunteers just 10 days ago. Hundreds of millions more to the IRS, refugee assistance, election security, the Department of Education. These may be worthy or not, but they certainly have no place in an economic relief package. And it's a shame that they're in here. The president is rightly concerned about whether the cure here, the economic cure, may be worse than the sickness. We incentivize small employees to keep their employees.
Time's expired. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Horsford.
Gentleman from Nevada is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Majority Leader, my chairman, Chairman Neal. Today, this body is here to send a united message to the American people. Help is on the way. Yesterday, the Department of Labor released devastating numbers revealing that 3.28 million people in America filed unemployment claims in the past week. My home state of Nevada alone saw a 182% increase in claims. That is unprecedented job loss. American
getting some
families
decent ticks coming in here, guys. The ad decline is starting to rise again.
An important
so they're trying to push up
in the
here.
Family's first coronavirus package
Pretty much everything
laid
is
the groundwork for
moving up.
expanding
I'll show it in a
unemployment
second.
benefits.
Give me just a minute
Now,
here.
with the
I'm
CARE
trying to reply to all these emails.
We are going above and beyond for our country's workers, providing an additional $600 per week for the next 4 months. No person in this country should worry about putting food on the table or paying their bills while trying to keep themselves, their families, or their neighbors safe. I know the pain and uncertainty that losing a job or facing a furlough causes, and that's why help is on the way. I urge my body to pass this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the former mayor of Provo, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Curtis.
Gentleman from Utah is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the CARES Act, the largest economic disaster recovery package in our nation's history. Given the size and the scope of this pandemic, it's a hefty price tag that must be paid. But I challenge my colleagues to join me in dealing with the consequences of spending money we don't have. It's time to get our financial house in order before it becomes our next crisis. I represent a state that has a balanced budget and a rainy day fund. We do it on a state level, and we can do it on a federal level. I've heard stories of the devastating effects of COVID-19. One of the most important, unique parts of Utah's culture is the pride we take in serving one another, especially in a time of crisis. This spirit, coupled with the targeted stream of resources designed to keep money in the economy and people healthy, will be the key ingredients to ensuring communities across the state can fully heal from this unprecedented crisis. We will weather this storm together. I yield my time.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to my friend, Mr. O'Halloran, from the state of Arizona, but a former uniformed police officer on the streets of one of our largest cities in America. He knows firsthand the challenges of our first responders. I yield to Mr. O'Halloran.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the CARES Act. Families and businesses across America and Arizona are struggling, and healthcare workers and first responders are being asked to perform their important work without proper protective gear. In my district, the Navajo Nation is dealing with a disproportionately high amount of COVID-19 cases. There were 71 confirmed cases in the community as of last night. This bill allocates over $1 billion to the Indian Healthcare Service and to tribal healthcare providers, and over $400 million to
trouble
tribal
on this
governments
price
for
level as
equipment.
well.
I urge my
2541.
fellow colleagues to vote for this legislative package that will provide relief to struggling American families and ensure the tribal communities are not overlooked. There is no excuse for our healthcare professionals to not be protected and our first responders. Thank you. And I yield.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm
Bonds
proud to
continuing
yield
to sell
1
off pretty
minute to
strong,
the gentleman from
looking
Kansas, Mr.
decently
Estes.
bullish, as well as
Gentleman
the
from
VIX coming
Kansas
down
recognized
now.
for 1 minute.
Financials
Thank
pushing
you.
up, staples
Mr.
pushing
Speaker,
down.
in times like this, I'm
Gold
inspired
also
by the
selling
strength
off,
and
oil trying to
generosity
push
of
up,
people
so
in
this is
Kansas
looking a little more
and
bullish.
across our nation. However, we know that the coronavirus outbreak
Except
has
for Tech
impacted
cannot
hardworking
catch a bid
Kansans,
here for the life of it.
their
Man,
families,
ugly.
and their friends and relatives across the country. Wichita is the air
Boeing
capital
bounced
of the world.
right
In
off
our
of
area,
that
we've already been
30
hit
MA
hard
and
by the grounding
upper
due to
Celt.
the
So if it can hold on to
737
that,
MAX issues.
this could be the
But now
consolidation to
small
get long
businesses are
next week.
facing uncertainty
Be some big moves
as
in that
Kansans
next
have been
week.
asked to stay at
Definitely
home,
keeping an eye
not
on
knowing
Boeing,
when they
guys.
can resume operations again. Today, I rise in behalf of workers and families in Kansas who need Congress to get this right. Every minute we spend trying to politicize this crisis wastes official time and hurts Americans. We should focus on what really matters, offering stability to families that need it and getting America back open for business again. The CARES Act assists small businesses and distressed industries, giving families and unemployed workers the financial means to make it to the other side of this crisis.
I'm going to post
and ensures
the
that job creators are positioned
hideous
to keep
charts.
paying their workers and rehire those who've been laid off when we recover. Kansans and Americans across the country
Gentleman's
are
time's
resilient.
expired. The gentleman
With that,
from
I yield
Texas
back.
reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to a gentleman who has served his country on the front lines of battle and the defense of freedom, Jason Crow from the state of Colorado.
Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Apex
Mr.
me
Speaker.
too, man.
Our
It's being
country and the American
horrible today,
people
and
are
it's
in
not
crisis.
just TOS though.
And
It's
it
kind of
requires
everything,
our action now.
especially because I'm
To be
streaming.
clear,
I can
this
tell.
is not a perfect
I
bill,
think
but
it's
it
just
is the
everything's
bill
overloaded,
that
man. I
America
think it's just
needs
these servers
today.
are a joke.
It will
You
provide
think we would have had
immediate
better
relief,
infrastructure,
direct
but
cash
apparently we
payments
don't.
to millions of Americans
Pisses me
to
off
pay
too,
rent,
man.
to buy food, and to pay their mortgages. Over $370 billion to our small
Oh,
businesses.
dude, it's horrible
immediate
today. Like
grants and
horrible.
loans. There is much more that needs to be done, but we will work together to do it and improve moving forward. We will get through this challenging time as a country.
Don't
because
you
that
do
is
you
what
use
America
Tastyworks
does.
too? Also.
We are at our best when we come together and meet our common challenges, and that is exactly what we
Oh,
will
okay.
do.
I figured I would never trade stock
yields.
on it,
Gentleman
but
from Maryland
it's
reserves.
been
Gentleman
okay.
from
But
Texas is recognized.
it's on a separate
Yes, Mr.
computer for
Speaker,
me,
I'm
and
proud
it's
to
like,
yield 1
and it's
minute
on
to the
Wi-Fi,
gentleman
but
from Idaho,
it's been
Mr.
okay. But I'm
Fulcher.
not pushing it as
Gentleman
hard,
from
so
Idaho is
it's not
recognized
as
for
good
1
of an
minute.
indicator. But
Speaker,
dude, it's been horrible
the
this
United
morning,
States
though.
of America is at war. It's an invisible foe, and it's called coronavirus. Now, having a virus is not a new precedent for America.
yeah,
It's happened twice in the 20th century.
You know what's weird is it
Called
used to have a
Spanish
thing
flu,
where you could like
polio.
change it right
But
away,
in an attempt
and then
to
lately
slow
it's been
this
like
outbreak, we
it's
did
like
set
it's a
the new
different
precedent.
message. Like they changed
For
it
the
on the
first time
last
in history,
update or something.
We mandated the economy shut down by law. Now, we don't yet know the benefits of that, but we do know the cost.
Yeah,
$2
yeah.
trillion. And one must ask, what is the cost of not acting? It's agonizing
Is it?
to take on this debt. But here's a game
It's been kind of
changer
crappy
to do.
here, but then today it's
Government
been
shut
nice
down
the
the
last
economy.
couple days, so we'll
It
see.
assumed the
But
responsibility for bringing it back.
damn, the
virus
Netherlands,
may threaten our
112 dead in the last 24 hours.
98%
I didn't
or
know
more
it was getting
survive
that bad there. Holy crap.
We will not allow the virus to take away our livelihoods. Speaker, I'll be supporting the bill.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Texas reserves.
Yeah,
Gentleman from
right.
Maryland
It's
is
like, yeah, I
recognized.
know. It's almost like, like some
Mr.
new
Speaker,
code in
I
there.
misspoke and elevated Mr. Nagus from Colorado, who is on the leadership and the freshman representative to the leadership. But now I am really recognizing the president of the freshman class, extraordinary woman who has been
And I
in the
even
federal
allocated
government
it
to
to
rescue
like I've
our
gone in
automobile
and like
industry.
gone and
I
allocated
thank her for her
massive
service.
amounts of
Haley
memory
Stevens
and
from the state
processor
of
to
Michigan.
it, but
For 1 minute.
it made a
Thank
slight
you.
The representative
difference.
from
But I don't
Michigan is
know.
recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise before you today in this chamber during this critical time in the United States of America, where our country faces a battle with a pandemic. The biggest battle we have faced as
So
a
that
nation
explains
together in
Russia's
generations.
issue. So
Amidst
Kremlin
uncertainty,
confirms
we work to
COVID-19
keep
cases
Americans
among
alive by
staff,
stopping
and
the
they won't
spread
say how
of
many, but I
COVID-19.
guarantee that's why they're
In
backing
these
off this
times,
whole
heroes
oil
will be
thing.
made
I
and
knew it.
not
I knew there was
selected.
something going
We are
on.
in a
They
global
don't. They don't
pandemic.
ever back off
Many
of shit. That's
Americans may
exactly
perish
the only
unexpectedly
explanation.
and
I
suddenly
fucking knew it.
in unfair
Pieces
circumstances.
of shit.
These are not pleasant words to hear.
Yeah, Snorkel
Treatments
says
and
his
cures
Tasty's
are
been working
needed.
just
They will
fine.
take
Mine seems to be
time.
fine this morning
Economic
too.
security
So
must be
I thought
guaranteed.
so.
The outbreak of
Yeah.
COVID-19 has spread throughout
It's just hard
our
for me to
land.
tell because it's like
Listen
on its
to the
own. It's
scientists
like
and the
I have like a
doctors who have spent a
special, like its
lifetime
own
in this
laptop
space.
that
Listen to
runs
Dr.
nothing
Fauci.
else.
This is not a moment to provide the false comforts of times
And then I have a
past.
separate laptop
We are
that
so
runs
proud
all
of
my new
Americans
stuff.
who are sacrificing so
This is the only
much
desktop,
right
so that's
now.
why it bothers
Our
me when it's
students
doing anything.
gone
But
from
there's
their
so
beloved
much shit going
classrooms
on this
and
thing. So.
classmates. We beam for our manufacturers who have
And then
no.
I think I'm gonna get a
request
separate.
30
I
more
I bought a bunch
seconds
of new
because I
stuff
rise
in
before you
December for
adorning
streaming.
you
I
Gentleman
think
from
I'm gonna
Maryland is
buy.
recognized.
Not for
I
personal
think I'm gonna get a
attention,
whole
not for
separate.
personal attention, but to encourage you to take
a whole
this
separate
seriously.
will
I
suspend.
rise for every
I'm
American
gonna
who
give
is
you
scared
more
right
time.
I'm not
now.
sure
To the families.
The gentlelady
how
will
I'll link
suspend. The
that.
gentleman from
I'll
Maryland is
probably just
recognized.
do that. So I'll probably just use this separate account, this new little account challenge for
gentlelady
that.
is
So it
out
might
of
be something I
order.
do forever
I yield the
after this
gentlelady
challenge
30
even.
additional
Just so
seconds.
that
The
like we'll have
gentlewoman
that
is
separate like
recognized for an
streaming
additional
account.
30
It might be kind of
seconds.
cool. Wow, this bitch is freaking out.
Sharing in the perfection of those who have not come before you.
You're gonna get arrested.
Medical need. Wars
Damn,
and
she's
blues
screaming.
pass. You will see darkness.
You
will
will
be
see
pushed.
darkness. Oh my God.
Society needs you to stand together
Get 'em,
at this
get 'em.
time. Our country loves you. To our doctors and our nurses, I wear these
The
latex
gentlelady's
gloves
time
to
has
tell
expired.
every
The
American
gentleman
Dude,
from
she is
Maryland is
freaking.
reserved.
Awesome.
The
That was
gentleman from
entertaining.
Texas is recognized.
Somebody's all yelling at her.
The gentleman from Texas is now recognized. The gentlelady from Michigan
This is
is
not
out
what
of order.
we need right now. Stop freaking out. You dumb bitch. You have good points, but you're saying it
The
wrong.
gentlelady from Michigan is out of order.
She's from Michigan, out of order.
The gentlelady from Michigan is no longer recognized.
To cut the microphone off, that's
The
awesome.
gentlelady from Michigan is no longer recognized.
They need one of those like old school giant like Bo Peep hooks where they can just like
Gentleman from
rip her
Texas
off the stage.
is recognized.
Thank you, Madam. Mr.
Damn, that
Speaker,
was
I'm
intense.
proud to restore
Politics are getting
bipartisan
exciting
work
again.
and yield for 1 minute to the gentleman from South Carolina,
awesome.
Mr. Wilson.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Ranking Member Kevin Brady. I rise in support of the legislation. This week, Star Parker provided insights saying staying free and faithful in a pandemic in the Daily Signal. The coronavirus creates and presents challenges to us as a nation, as individuals. There are principles we should keep in mind. We have a Constitution that assigns limited defined powers to the federal government and leaves the rest to the states and individuals. Trump acted with deliberation, shutting down flights from China. We know this virus is most lethal to the elderly. There are large variations among the states. The answer is we should maximize local responsibility. There are two other things to keep in mind. One is life is unpredictable. That's why socialism and national planning are so bogus and always result in failure, and that's why freedom is so critical and
stocks
important.
continue just
Only
to fall
through freedom
apart.
is responsibility focused on individuals. Two, faith is critical. It's faith that keeps us human, faith that binds us together, unique
Roku's
individuals.
breaking that-
Faith will play a
that
key role
support.
in helping
Not
our
good.
nation through this crisis
Not
and
good,
emerge better
Roku.
for it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Man, what a rangy day
Speaker, I
there.
now have
Everybody,
the
this
privilege
volume
of
is drying up. They are
yielding to
waiting
the
for this
gentlelady
vote.
from Queens,
And these guys are taking their
one of
sweet
the
ass
epicenters
time.
of this challenge to our
course they
country,
are.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our Majority Leader. I represent one of the hardest hit communities in the hardest hit city in this country, Queens, New York. 13 dead in a night in Elmhurst Hospital
AOC.
alone. Our community's reality is this country's future if we don't do anything. Hospital workers do not have protective equipment. We don't have the necessary ventilators, but we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history.
Shit, they might not vote this in. This isn't sounding promising.
For crumbs for our families, and the option that we have is to either let
This
them
market
suffer
will tank
with
like
nothing,
nothing anybody's
or to
seen if they
allow
don't.
this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future. There should be shame about what was
Shame
fought for in
for
this bill
shame.
and the choices that we have to make.
Get 'em,
Gentlelady's
girl,
time
get
has
'em.
expired.
And I yield.
Gentleman
And I
from
yield.
Maryland reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Riggleman.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It wasn't so long ago that our country experienced an event that would bring Americans together to fight a common enemy and help those in need. On September 11, 2001, America experienced the worst act of terrorism in its history. The resolve and patriotism I felt that day as a warfighter is so very similar to the resolve and patriotism I feel today. Government can do some things for the American people. The CARES Act is not perfect, but it provides much needed funds for medical equipment, support for small businesses, and additional tools to fight the crisis. This bill is a step forward, and when combined with the same American spirit that brought us through 9/11 and crises past, we can come out of this stronger. The true strength of our great nation is what people do for each other. Rugged individualism turns into compassionate sacrifice. The charity of American spirit expands and envelops all others. We see those in need, we act, we volunteer, we lead, we step into the breach. Almost nothing perfect comes out of government. Service, however, demands that we put forth a perfect effort to do the best we can.
Texas Reserves, gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now have the privilege of yielding to a gentlelady from Northwest Illinois, the heartland of our country, and one of the leaders of our party, Sherry Bustos from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute. For 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the CARES Act. Yesterday, the United States became the country with the most known COVID-19 cases in the world. And we are all concerned for our families, for our friends, for our farmers, for our futures. But today, we have the opportunity to take a step forward, to come together, even as we must stand apart, to help our fellow Americans, to strengthen our communities, and to face this threat as one. Illinois workers are afraid they will lose their jobs, if they have not already. Small businesses are making hard decisions between keeping staff or closing their doors. And our farmers, who have already endured so much pain, are worried sick about what is ahead this year. Not only because of this worldwide pandemic,
you guys.
but also because of the threats of more flooding.
Put me in, coach.
That is why I join my colleagues on the floor today to cast my vote for the most significant relief package in American history.
Oh my
This
God,
vital
Cal,
legislation
Sparty,
will help
you're
struggling
up.
Americans make ends meet. It will
That's
expand
great.
unemployment insurance to help those who lose their jobs through no fault of their own. It will help small businesses secure precious dollars to keep their employees and communities afloat. And it will help our farmers, who have always stood with us, to provide much-needed resources to feed the world. This bill is not perfect, no bill ever is, but it is the strong medicine we need to defeat this invisible enemy. Let us come together today to pass this bill and declare that no virus will ever tear this country apart. With that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this unprecedented economic relief package in response to these unprecedented times. It is clear this pandemic is having a profound impact on the American people. It is our job to make sure that this impact is not a lasting one. Especially clear is just how devastating this crisis is hitting rural communities like those in central Washington. This bill provides desperately needed relief to rural hospitals, many of which are the only health care provider for a great number of my constituents. It will support the agricultural industry to ensure hardworking farmers and ranchers can continue to provide food security for our nation. And it will provide stability for workers and small business owners who are the backbone of our local economies. Mr. Speaker, this is a 9/11 moment, a time to put partisan differences aside, policy goals aside, and work together as Americans for the people of our nation. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield to the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros, for 1 minute.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the gentleman for yielding. As you all know, our country is in a crisis, and the American people are looking for Congress for action and leadership. That is why I stand in support of the CARES Act, which provides our workers, small businesses, healthcare workers, and so many more in California's 39th district the relief they need. Whether it's to provide PPE and medical equipment to our healthcare workers, financial support for our workers without jobs, or resources for our small businesses, Congress is taking significant steps to help our communities. At the same time, we're enforcing strict oversight to prevent secret bailouts and ensure that those on the front lines of our global epidemic come first. While the CARES Act throws a lifeline to our workers and our economy, we will need to do more. There's not a single community across the United States that hasn't been affected by the coronavirus in some way. That's why our next stimulus package must provide direct funding for our cities and towns with less than 500,000 residents. Although we have had to be physically apart, our community and our country have come together with the American spirit and determination needed to help us get through this crisis.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Puerto Rico, Ms. Gonzalez-Colon.
Gentlelady from Puerto Rico is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CARE Act ensures that all citizens in Puerto Rico are treated equally under the federal grants and benefits incorporated in this bill, which I strongly support. Puerto Rico has been in a lockdown since March 15, and more than 48,000 people lost their jobs already. This bill will help our small businesses, bad people, and the nutritional assistance program, as well as the health industry, to tackle those issues. Puerto Rico as well already, because we have the infrastructure of a great pharmaceutical and skilled workforce that stands ready to ramp up and deliver medications, devices, when backed up by the Defense Production Act. We need to rebuild our American workforce in a domestic territory. That's the reason I thank the President, the leadership of the Senate, and the House for putting together this economic health package to give our localities the resources to tackle this crisis affecting our nation so we can focus on staying safe and healthy. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of it.
The gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can I inquire of the time that is left for both sides?
The gentleman from Maryland has 52.5 minutes. From Texas has 63 minutes.
63?
63 minutes.
Thank you. I now yield to the former chairman of our campaign committee, extraordinary candidate for the United States Senate in New Mexico, my friend Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico. 2 minutes.
Gentleman from New Mexico is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my friend, the Majority Leader. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of legislation before us. We're living in uncertain times. This virus has drastically reshaped each one of our communities, and there's likely more change to come. Today, Americans need us. They need the support and resources provided by this bipartisan legislation. They need access to protective equipment, a personal safety net, and economic assistance. Workers need assurances that their economic security is paramount because it is the American worker at the cornerstone of our economy. In this bill, I fought so that trade workers and engineers employed at New Mexico's national labs can continue protecting our national security mission. We cannot let them down. We must pass this bill for the teacher who is delivering meals to students to make sure they don't go hungry just because they're not in the classroom. We must pass this bill for nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals, and first responders who haven't slept as they provide for the sick. We must pass this bill for rural communities who need the lifeline to ensure seniors are fed and individuals can access healthcare when the nearest doctor is hundreds of miles away. We must pass this for everyone who is fighting to keep one another safe, healthy, and afloat. We cannot let them down. The reality we wake up to each day may change, but what remains the same is that we face this crisis together. And like every crisis we have faced before, we will get through this together. Passage of this legislation is an important step, but I want every New Mexican and every American to know that we understand this uncertain time demands an extraordinary response. And together, we will not let each other down, and we will meet that challenge. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman from Maryland reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute. The gentleman from West Texas, Mr. Arrington.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the Greek physician Hippocrates once said, "For extreme diseases, extreme methods of cure are most suitable."
Really.
And while
Yeah,
this
the play would have
will have
been
some short-term side
to
effects,
so what I
it's
had
our
posted
best
the
hope
pre-market was
for curing the
to
crisis.
basically on that
Our
1 minute
nation is
pullback
fighting
to
a global
grab
pandemic, and the
calls for the
prospects
short
of a
squeeze
looming
and then
national
at that peak
disaster.
there to go
While I have
short. It's
serious
so tricky because
concerns
it
with
moves
some
so
bad
fast
policies,
lately.
partisan
So
provisions,
hard, I know.
and the overall price tag of this legislation,
But be ready for the
I'm
next
more
one, man. That was a
concerned
good
about
call.
inaction, delaying support for millions of hurting Americans, and the threat of an even costlier recession for our country. This national emergency has wreaked havoc
on our country and upended every aspect of our lives. We must move quickly to provide temporary relief for our working families, small businesses, and frontline healthcare professionals. Mr. Speaker, this is uncharted territory. This is an unprecedented crisis. Extraordinary circumstances call for extraordinary measures. I stand united with my colleagues and my countrymen in these difficult days. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have the privilege of yielding 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Virginia,
The privilege.
Mr. Connolly.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the Speaker, and I thank my good friend from Maryland, the Majority Leader. America is bleeding. America is in deep suffering and even deeper anxiety. It counts on its Congress to respond with alacrity and thoughtfulness and action. We have no time to dither. We have no time to engage in ideological or petty partisan fights. Our country needs us as one. 3.28 million people filed for unemployment last week. In my state, that translated into a 17-fold increase in 1 week. The number of coronavirus victims quadrupled in that time period in my state. And those figures are reflected throughout the country. Now is the time to come together. Now is the time to show our fellow countrymen we can rise to this occasion and reinstill in them the hope and confidence
The gentleman's
that will
time
come.
has expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Maryland is reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to yield 1 minute. The gentleman from Ohio, Dr. Winstrup.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Americans are suffering. They're suffering in the face of an unseen enemy, a natural disaster that we can only defeat together. I've spent hours on the phone with Ohioans and national leaders, doctors, researchers, elected officials, business and community leaders, listening to what they are doing to help us through this crisis and asking what they need. This bill is not perfect, but it does provide emergency relief legislation that helps our healthcare workers, our hospitals, our businesses with liquidity, and helps our workers to keep them on the payroll, as well as helping Americans most in need. We see businesses retooling their industry. We see groups donating supplies and others seeking cures. We're learning many lessons, finding many flaws that we must fix. So we have the opportunity to come back even stronger and more responsible than ever. We need to pass this bill. This time is very unprecedented. Let's get it done. And I yield back.
Wow, Netflix really coming back alive here, looking really good again. Cross that key level one more time. You need to hold it up there. By far the strongest of the fangs. Again. Man, Roku's really starting to lose its footing. I might flip. See, there's nothing wrong with saying you're wrong, guys. I do it a lot. That's how I keep doing this for so long. I'm feeling like I may be absolutely wrong about Roku, and I might be looking to short Roku, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to be here as a member of the Energy and Commerce
That's why we don't just hop in things without watching them and doing true analysis and true due diligence. You can't just hop into things. It's why so many people are blowing up all the time.
Americans are
they just front run everything, thinking their first instinct is right. It's usually wrong.
And I'm sure yours too are just
and I'm a case in point on that.
But today we will pass a bill that will provide critical relief to begin the healing in our communities. And despite, I have to say, the failure of leadership from our president, Congress has in fact stepped up. And thanks to the unity of House and Senate Democrats, we pushed the Republican initial proposal from corporate first to families and workers first. We fought for and won a $100 billion investment in hospitals and healthcare systems that our doctors and nurses on the front line are fighting with the coronavirus, often without the equipment that they need.
Getting through the close of the EU here, see if we have any volume pickup and reversal
the
here.
Defense Production Act so that our frontline workers will have the protective gear that they need and right now are not getting. The CARES Act will also provide double the unemployment insurance benefits that Republicans initially proposed. That this will help countless restaurant workers and small business employees who call my office and say, we need help. Thanks to Democrats, the small business owners in my district will now be able to make payroll with their mortgages and utility costs eligible for Small Business Administration loan forgiveness. And sadly, this bill isn't all that it could be. I am deeply disturbed that my Republican colleagues are trying to exclude local Planned Parenthood clinics from this small business financing, and especially since they are these clinics are helping people every single day to be able to get the health care they need. And I'm also really disappointed that they took this opportunity to irrelevantly add to this the Hyde Amendment. I want to especially take the time to thank the people that are working today. And I'm glad to be here among you doing just that.
All right,
but
I'm
we
going
are
to
seeing
get out of
people
here.
that are outside here, the Capitol Police, people that are helping to clean our environment, that people that are
All right, guys, I'm probably going to end the stream for now. I will most likely, I'll definitely be in Discord, obviously, and come back on even to talk through with the vote, depending on what's going on. May do a special little extra stream there to watch it and then into close. But we'll keep our eyes on the same thing. They're going to be just chopping around. It looks like we're going to be absolutely range-driven, low volume until either news comes out on this or they start to come in with some volume, but it doesn't look like that's happening. I was waiting for the EU close to see, because sometimes, a lot of times, 7 out of 10 times, we'll get a push either direction with the volume that comes in from there. But it looks like everybody is just absolutely waiting for this. So until next time, we'll see what's going on, and we'll come back on for the end of the day and see what's up. So be careful, guys. Watch for the choppiness. I would say short spikes, and definitely the lows are not in. I am really leaning harshly bearish, especially with oil going into next week. I wouldn't be surprised to see if oil dip below 20 next week, guys. So post more stuff about this this weekend. We'll see if we can't do a podcast Sunday evening. Me and Darth maybe get Addict on there, and we'll go over some of this long-term stuff, but a lot of looking towards next week. But very bearish. Lows are not in. I'll talk to you guys all soon.